All right, so we are live now. Thanks to everybody for tuning in on this Sunday afternoon. It is beautiful outside, and yet you've still decided to come spend an hour with us. So I really appreciate that. My name is Kerri Sparling, and I'm the editorial director for Children with Diabetes. And this afternoon, I am joined by Trang Ly. Trang, I can read your whole bio, or I can read just some of it. I'll read the first 2 lines, and then you can say hi to everybody. So Trang is the Senior Vice President and Medical Director at Insulet Corporation, and she leads the Omnipod Horizon Automated Glucose Control Clinical Program. I had that committed to memory and pretend I didn't just read it from the paper printed out next to me. But thank you for joining us, Trang.
Thanks, Kerri. Happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you, and I know it's you and I live close to one another, so it's really nice at your house too. So thanks for coming inside for a little bit. How is everybody doing where you are?
We're good. We're
Yeah.
we're surviving. Yeah.
Well, I know last time we had talked, we had done a practice webinar on Friday, and I gave the warning that my kids could come blasting through the door at any moment. So I'm going to give that warning to you again and to everybody who's listening and watching at home, because there could be kids dive bombing through my office door pretty much any moment. We're just going to hope it doesn't happen. Same for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 boys.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be wild.
They could need any emergency. So.
Or even non-emergencies.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But I know you have some slides for us to kind of walk through, and also that we're going to be doing sort of a free-flowing discussion as we go, and hopefully people in the audience will have questions as well. So whenever you would like to get started, we can get rolling, and then as people are asking questions, we can keep that conversation going as the slides go through. So would that work for you, Trang?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. What do you have for us?
Okay. Well, I'm, as Kerri mentioned, I'm a medical director at Insulet, and we're the makers of the Omnipod insulin management system. And I thought the Children with Diabetes group would be interested in some of the updates and basically what's going on at Insulet. So firstly, just in terms of general updates, we have been manufacturing continuously throughout this COVID pandemic. So we first heard about the outbreak in January of this year. And for those of you who don't know, we actually make pods both in the United States and in China. And so we've been managing the outbreak since China since we knew about it in China in January. And for many years now, we've built up our redundancy in our manufacturing and in our supply chain to make sure that we always have enough pods in inventory to meet the demands for our podders. So really pleased to be able to say that we have been delivering continuously, and we don't expect any interruption in supply of pods for our podders. A few other changes. We're a global company. We have about 1,500 employees across many countries, US and in Europe. And the bulk of our workforce have had to work from home outside of our critical functions, including manufacturing and distribution. And our staff have been doing virtual trainings, and over 2,000 trainings have actually been completed globally. And that is, people who have just started Omnipod, or who may have changed from a pump, or coming from multiple daily injections. So a lot of virtual visits. Many patients, I'm sure, have been having telemedicine visits with their endocrinologists during this time. And so we definitely encourage people to make a telehealth visit with their endocrinologist or CDE during this time if they haven't seen them. And in terms of the pandemic, we know that a lot of our families, a lot of the diabetes community has been affected through various changes during the pandemic. And one of the things that I'm proudest that we've been able to do as a company is offer expansion of our financial assistance program for current users of Omnipod in the US and in Canada. So we've always had a financial assistance program, but expanding it during this time is something that I'm really proud of.
And so you've just said a couple of things that like I hope have really resonated for people that are listening, because there's so much reassurance to what you just said. As a person with diabetes, I'm listening to you say, we're making sure that our supply chain is not interrupted and that we have financial assistance. That's the stuff that we're worrying about as a group, in addition to the general worries of the global pandemic. Like I feel weird even saying the phrase. It feels almost fake, but it's gigantically real, and we're very concerned about it. So it's great that you've been addressing those concerns. That gives a lot of reassurance to people. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Kerri. I think, this has been a huge time of fear and anxiety for our entire community. So not just patients and podders, but families of those with diabetes, as well as endocrinologists and the carers, our certified diabetes educators, nurses, psychologists. It affects such a huge part of our community. And so, being able to reassure people that, yes, of course, pods are an essential medical supply, and of course we would be continuously producing that, I think is important. And really being able to help people in this true time of need is something that is really important for us as a company.
That means a lot to us as a community.
Yeah, thanks, Kerri. And T1D Exchange has been doing research and starting up a program looking at the surveillance of COVID-19 in patients with type 1 diabetes. They're starting up that study. We're pleased to be supporting that study as well. So these are just general things that we're doing because we know that there have been clear changes in the community, and we want everyone to know that we're supporting as best we can. So I want to share some stories. My favorite part of my job is getting to meet people who use our product. So this is Laurie. She just started on Omnipod. She was actually started through our virtual pump training program. So she came from multiple daily injections and just started the Omnipod system. She was diagnosed at 38, and she's now just a little over 60 years of age. And her husband found Omnipod and said, you should give this a try. And her hobbies are free diving and mermaiding. And when I spoke to her on the phone, she said the deepest depth she dives to is about 80 feet. So she's a pretty serious diver. And she said, Omnipod will allow me to keep living my dream. I wasn't a mermaid at a young age, but I am now. And you can follow her Instagram handle and see these amazing photos of her swimming and living her best life.
And so can you walk me through the verb of to mermaid? Like, what does that mean to mermaid? I've never met a mermaid before, and I've never seen that phrase on a slide before. So what does that mean?
I only just learned about this, so I'm certainly no expert. But Laurie says, so you can get these tails that are very large and elaborate and beautiful and glamorous, and you wear them, and it helps you swim, and you look beautiful, and you take photos, and you look like a real life mermaid. And
that is so cool.
That's what she does, and she has a special group of other people that she does this with, and she does it in Florida. And she just loves getting out and being in the water, and just keeps fit and active. And she said that if I'm ever in Florida, she's going to take me mermaiding. So I'll have to give you an update.
Well, it's just, when you see people's hobby list, that's one I've never seen listed as someone's hobby before. So that is incredible. And she did a virtual pump start, you said?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so what does that actually look like for your team? Like, how do you?
Yeah, so it's just like, how we're doing this, we're using GoToWebinar. our team uses WebEx. So, someone has a computer on their side, one of our trainer has a computer, they do screen share, they have the products in front of them, so they do everything themselves. And then our trainer makes sure that they're putting in the right numbers, that they're following the right steps, and they're stepping through the whole process to get started. So our product, luckily our product is pretty straightforward to learn how to use, and so it's pretty easy to put on, and you don't have to handle any needles, for instance, and so it's pretty straightforward.
And so they're walking people through that right on video.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, in the comfort of their own homes, and they don't have to go into a doctor's office. They don't have to have a trainer in front of them guiding them, because the user can do it by themselves. They can walk through the setup process as well as putting on a pod, which is literally, you fill it with insulin, you take the stickers off, you put it on, and then it automatically inserts a needle.
Well, it's really nice to hear that virtual trainings are happening, because that doesn't make the pandemic an impediment to people getting on the pump therapy that they're looking for. They can make the choice and then still move forward, even if they're not leaving their house.
Yeah, that's right.
Can do it.
Yeah, and it's what Laurie talks about is, she talks about deciding that she wanted to go on a pump. Well, she actually talks about wanting better glucose control, and so she actually texts me every few days saying, "Oh my goodness, my numbers are in the hundreds now. This product is really wonderful." And so, she wanted to get better glucose control. She wanted to kind of pump. Her endo prescribed it, and within a few days she received the product, and then she was able to start immediately on it. So even during a pandemic, it didn't stop her from living her best life and getting on pump therapy and getting better glucose control.
That's awesome. And we did have a question from someone in the audience. Hi, Brian. About getting insurance approval. So do you mind if I jump in there with that, because it seems pretty relevant to what we were just talking about with the pandemic and what have you. The question is, my son has been an Omnipod user for 5 years now. We've struggled to get Blue Cross Blue Shield to approve access to the DASH system. Has there been any movement on approvals? And will this cause additional difficulties when trying to get onto the Horizon system? Is this a question you want to jump into?
Yeah, so I would say that we have specialists who can help Brian and his child work through some of those issues. Although we've made huge progress in terms of DASH being on a lot of commercial payers, I believe there are certain ones that are more challenging than others to get DASH. And so it's something that we work through with a lot of families and patients. And so I would, rather than talking about that individual case, I would be able to put Brian in touch with our specialists who manage that part.
Sure. Thank you for that.
The idea is that Horizon, when it comes out, would be accessible through the pharmacy channel. So we are moving away from DME and moving into the pharmacy channel for all of our future products, because the pod itself is a disposable product. So we believe it's a better experience for the patient to get their products. They're already getting their sensors through pharmacy, so we want their pump supplies through pharmacy, and then their insulin through pharmacy. So it's just a much better experience for the patient. And then, ideally a better experience for the physician as well, because they can just write an e-script and then be able to prescribe the Omnipod product for their patient.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So this is Megan and her 2 boys. So she actually has 2 sons with type 1 diabetes, age 4 and 7. And they were diagnosed over a year ago, just over a year ago, in February of last year. And they both started Omnipod via virtual training as well within the last few weeks. And I called her and I, asked her how she was doing and how her boys were doing. And she says it's really great and we love it. She was actually in quarantine I think in the early days when, it wasn't kind of mandatory to stay at home, I think she had to be quarantined for her work. And she was just really grateful to be able to do virtual training in the comfort of her own home. And, her boys were at home and clearly excited to get on Omnipod.
Well, and I'm reading this bullet point. It says that both were diagnosed with type 1 in February of 2019. So both kids were diagnosed at the same time?
Yeah, so that's right. So actually, the younger one, the 4-year-old, was diagnosed first. Megan actually diagnosed her son through the symptoms that he had. And then when when that diagnosis was confirmed, she asked for her older son to be diagnosed. And sure enough, both boys were diagnosed with type 1.
Wow.
She actually has a younger son as well, 3, who doesn't have it.
That's right. Yeah, we had talked about that. That made me think a lot about the programming that we offer through the Friends for Life conference, because you don't often, I mean, you so often hear about kids and adults who have diabetes, but not so often the support system that's kind of baked around them, their parents, their siblings, and whatever else. So I thought it was really interesting that you brought up the 2 kids with diabetes and then mentioned that there was the other kid who didn't have it. And so do you know how the little guy felt about being the only kid without diabetes in the house? Did that come up?
Well, he's only 3, so he's probably young at this point to probably have expressed some of those. Sorry.
That's okay. This is real life live stuff. Your screens are back.
They're back? Yeah, it
Yep.
just like disappeared. It just like went to my email for some reason. Okay, so there we go. Okay. Yeah, I think the 3-year-old, it's probably early days to really vocalize how he feels about not having diabetes. But I think having more than one child in the family is definitely more than double the work, and I'm sure more than double the anxiety that it takes to care for even one child with type 1.
Sure. Especially during a pandemic. And so this group, Megan and her kids, they did virtual pump trainings recently, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is what the trainer was seeing, and she was Mimi took this photo, and she was just so excited because it was one of her first trainings, and the mum Megan was so happy to be part of it, and so she took this photo and shared it around, and so yeah, things, trainings are still happening and people are still getting on product, and this family actually, I think both boys started on Medtronic pumps, and then they are now giving Omnipod a go.
And they're doing it from the comfort of their own home. That is really, I love that part of it, that it's something that people can just kind of jump on and do if they want to make that move. That's very cool.
Yeah, and I think people forget how hard it is to take a day off work and get the whole family, and the anxiety that comes with training. And something like this, like if you had a grandma or other carer, they could dial in as well, and they could be listening in the background and hear the same things that the parents are hearing. So it really does allow for that, multi-carer training, consistency, all of that as well.
I hadn't thought of that. I went on a pump when I was 24, and I bet my mom would have loved, even though I was 24 years old at the time, to have sat in on the call to get like the primer on it. So that's really cool that you can have multiple caregivers signing in.
Yep. And this is Morgan. I haven't actually met Morgan, or I haven't spoken to her. She's starting on Omnipod as well, just recently, and she lives 2 hours away from the nearest clinic, and she loves swimming, and Omnipod has been really great for her as well. And I think the thing about telemedicine and telehealth is that hopefully, as clinics get more comfortable and efficient with telemedicine, and people are reimbursed, then hopefully people from who don't live close to a clinic can get care. And there's a lot of people globally who don't live close to a diabetes clinic who may not always get the care that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really changed the way we practice medicine, and hopefully we can offer better diabetes care to a larger group of people.
And this might be a slightly out of line question, but I mean, things with the pandemic will taper off eventually, and we will get back to some probably modified sense of normal. But do you think that the company will continue to do virtual pump trainings after this necessity window?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
I definitely think that as a company we will continue it. In fact, you know, I think anything that increases comfort for the patient and makes it more efficient and convenient for the patient, we should be striving for.
Oh, Trang, so Megan just popped up in our question box, and she said that their youngest was 18 months old when his brothers were diagnosed, so it's really all he knows. And he says he's very interested in all things diabetes, but glad he doesn't need to finger prick himself. So there
Excellent.
it is.
Great.
It's always good to get like real-time data.
Yeah, that's wonderful that we've got audience participation.
Yeah, that's very cool. Megan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Megan.
And we are getting some questions coming in about the Horizon timeline, and I know you have slides coming up on that, so just popping that in there as a next.
Good. Well, I wanted to share some new data that just came through where we've been showing Omnipod users time in range during COVID-19. So these are people who use our Omnipod system and who upload their data to Gluco. And so we're able to cross-check the PDM serial numbers with our data so that we know that, you know, each patient is a real patient, each account is a real patient. And then we are able to look at insulin data as well as CGM data. So these are both Omnipod and CGM users for the last 12 months. And so we're able to track time in range through their CGM on a daily basis in actual fact. And so this is the average time in range for our users during COVID. So we're up to about 69% time in range since COVID was declared a pandemic versus 66% in the 10 months or so in the preceding period. So a really fascinating change that you see here of a real positive lift in the time in range. And the other interesting thing is that year over year, you know, we've been tracking this data for about 3 years now. Every year around December, January, New Year's time, we always see a reduction in time in range.
I was just looking at that, and that really spoke to me.
Yeah, so we get a dip during Thanksgiving, and then another bigger, longer dip during Christmas and New Year. Yeah,
I like that kind of data.
Yeah, it was just so interesting to me because I really didn't know what to expect. And if things had gotten worse, it would be totally understandable if numbers had gotten worse. But it was just really inspiring, to be honest, to see that there was this lift as people were clearly taking better care of themselves during this time.
And so have you talked to any of these users to see if, like, what kind of anecdotes correlated with that data to see what was making it more accessible to be time in range, to increase the time in range?
So we haven't yet. So this data just came in, and I think we'll learn more through research projects such as the one that T1D Exchange is supporting. I think sort of anecdotally, as we speak to physicians during this time, you know, what I've heard is that people are, you know, more than ever more interested in what they can do to prevent themselves getting COVID, and making sure that, if they do get it, how do they make sure that they take care of themselves. So it seems to have highlighted the need to take better care of themselves. And so the enders that I've spoken to have been kind of pleasantly surprised by this data, but it sort of correlates with their sort of what they're seeing in clinic as well.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. It's nice to see any kind of good news or good data, health data coming out of any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think, there's some concerning data showing that, people who are admitted to hospital with COVID are, something like up to 55% have diabetes, and some of the outcomes that come from being hospitalized, and then outcomes related to that can be quite a negative story. And so it was just really interesting for me to see, well, sure, that is what happens if you end up in the hospital, and then end up being part of that denominator. But what about just the real world, and our many thousands of people out there in the real world with diabetes who are having to take care of themselves? What happens to them?
Right. And I think it's important, we talked about this before, about highlighting whatever bits of good news that we can, while simultaneously acknowledging that on paper there are some concerns for people with diabetes in terms of the pandemic and all that sort of stuff. And so you can't pretend to not acknowledge both sides of that. So I'm glad that we're doing that here.
Yeah. So here's another interesting thing we found. So for a few years, we've always seen this pattern of a difference between the working week versus Saturdays and Sundays, where time and range tended to fall. And if you're getting the feeling, what day is it? If all the days are just merging into one another, it certainly seems that people with diabetes also seem to be living the same day every day as well. But the great news is that on average, the timing range seems to be a few percentage points higher, and on all days during this pandemic.
Because every day is day. There is no, there's like no Monday or Tuesday anymore. But I think it's interesting that Thursdays, and I also like the phrase used to be, Thursdays used to be the best day of the week. Was there any insight as to what made Thursday such a great day for people, blood sugar wise?
I don't know. It's a pattern we've noticed for a long time, but I'm not sure why Thursdays are better than other days. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't pretend to know. Yeah.
Well, I would love to find that out from somebody who's having all these great Thursdays. So,
yeah.
But that's interesting data.
Thanks. Okay, so I know everyone wants to know about Horizon, but I wanted to quickly talk about Dash, which is a stepping stone towards Horizon. So last year we came out with Dash, which is Omnipod with our lockdown Android phone, which has the Dash app on that phone, and talks to the pod via Bluetooth technology. And then that product has the apps with it, the Omnipod display app, where the user can see their insulin delivery on their own personal iOS device, and then the Omnipod View app, where a caregiver can see the insulin delivery remotely as well. So now, you can imagine you send your child off to school, although no one's going to school right now.
Off to living room.
Yeah, off to the living room. The parent can log in and see both CGM, so with Dexcom, and now also with Omnipod as well, be able to see that data remotely. And so Dash was important for us because it is the platform on which Horizon is built, and leverages the mobile technology, Bluetooth technology, and then also, you know, Wi-Fi technology as well. So in hopefully, well, it's May now, so hopefully next month we'll be releasing a new Dash PDM, which will allow Insulet and Gluco cloud-to-cloud connectivity. So automatic upload to Gluco. So you know, less work for endocrinologists to have to physically upload their pump, and then patients can also go into their Gluco accounts and see both their CGM and insulin information on their Gluco app as well. So that's our Dash system. Okay, so when will Omnipod be a closed loop system? So Omnipod Horizon is our automated glucose control system. It is our on-body hybrid closed loop system with the algorithm on the pod. And so this product will also enable personalized personal phone control. So in the future, you would download an app and be able to control Horizon pods from your personal smartphone. And the product is intended to maximize time in range, minimize hypoglycemia as well as hyperglycemia. And as with all of our products, it's intended to be simple and easy to use, give people freedom, and you know, the idea is that it will reduce some of the burden of diabetes care.
So who's that baby?
So this is Jenna, and this is her first baby. She's actually mum of two, and she's got just a second baby come out. Sorry, that sounded weird. She gave birth to her second child.
So she had a baby escape her, and then a second one escaped her. I'm with you. It's a weird day. It's totally good.
So Jenna was diagnosed, I guess, you know, sometimes you think of diabetes or type 1 as a condition that only affects children, but, you know, Laurie was diagnosed later, Jenna was diagnosed later in life as well. Yeah, so she uses Omnipod and Dexcom. So she's not actually using Horizon, but that's what Horizon will look like. So, you know, Dexcom CGM going to the pod and then automating insulin delivery. Yeah, and she's mum of two now, so life is busy. So I've noticed that her Instagram posts are few and far between right now.
Well, it's just, as a mom who has type 1 and I have two kids, it's nice to see other moms with the devices stuck on them. It's like my reality, and it's nice to see it reflected in the stuff that you're showing today too. And it's a cute baby.
So Horizon's in clinical trials right now. We're on pause right this minute. We actually started the trial in December of last year. We have more than 200 people, both children and adults, who are using the product. It's on pause right now because of a software issue, which we've actually fixed, and so it's undergoing review with FDA right now. And so we got about halfway through the study before we needed to stop. So we're looking forward to getting the updated software out to all of our study participants so that we can resume the study and finish it. And so the product that our study participants are using includes the Dexcom G6 sensor, and then the Omnipod, and then the algorithm actually on the pod itself. So this is a picture of what their PDM looks like. The PDM actually is only needed to stop and start a pod and then deliver meal boluses and corrections if they need it. But otherwise, they don't actually need the PDM to stay in closed loop. Yeah, so the
Wow.
algorithm, as opposed to some other systems, the algorithm doesn't sit on the phone. The algorithm is actually on the pod itself. And so some of the audience might be interested to know, how exactly does that all happen? So you have your separate G6 working through the G6 app, and G6 can talk to essentially two devices. It has two medical slots. And so one slot is with the G6 app where you can see your G6, values, and you can stop and start a sensor. And then you enter in the transmitter ID into the Horizon app, and that allows the pod to know what signal and what transmitter to look for. And so that's how that pod recognizes the sensor signal from that device in order to automate insulin delivery.
Oh, wow. And so we have a couple of detailed questions regarding Horizon that are coming into the chat. Did you have more slides on Horizon specifically? Do you want me to wait until the end of that?
No,
Okay.
I'm happy to take them.
Okay, the first one was about a minimum age or a minimum insulin daily requirement for Horizon. This particular question references a 16-month-old with type 1 who only uses about 5 units a day. I almost said daily, but that would have been totally redundant. So they're only using 5 units a day.
Yeah. So right now, the product has been tested down for children aged 6 years of age, and we will be anticipating that when we get that product cleared, it will be only for children aged 6 and above. But we are doing clinical studies where we'll be doing it probably in the July timeframe for down to children aged 2 to 5.9 years of age. And when in terms of the system itself, there is no kind of minimum requirement for the system itself. You set it up just like you set up Omnipod. You go in, you enter in the basal rates, and then your insulin to carb ratio, your correction factor, target glucose, and then the system figures it out and then automates insulin delivery based upon what you've entered. So there isn't a minimum requirement per se. However, when this product gets cleared, there may be some restrictions. So we don't know right now what those restrictions may end up being. It will kind of depend on the data and the safety data that we generate in the next few months to decide on that. But the system itself doesn't require a minimum amount, if that makes sense.
I hope it does. It does. I hope that translates. Yeah, I think that makes sense for that question.
Yeah, and for the trials that we've done, I think, the lowest we got to in our previous system was around about 10 units a day was the minimum. And I think when we do the 2 to 6 year olds, we may get even lower than that. And so we'll be able to look at our data and look at the safety of those, those parameters before it gets cleared.
Got it. And so another question we have is about the Dexcom G7. So what will happen when the Dexcom G7 comes out? Will it be able to immediately upgrade with the new interoperability standards, or will it need to go through a full FDA submission again?
The idea is that it won't have to go through a full submission again if it's an iCGM. The idea is that we'll need to do the technical work to ensure interoperability. And then if it meets the iCGM requirements and our interoperability requirements, and if everything works as intended, the whole idea is that it should be more of a streamlined approach so that people can get access to better technology quicker.
That's great. Another one that we have is if you are on Dash, if you're currently using Dash, what will the process be to upgrade to Horizon?
So we don't know exactly yet. We haven't announced what that pathway is. But I will say that what is important to us is that our patients, that we take care of our current patients. That's really important to us. So, you know, what we don't want is that people, you know, everything that we've done to date is to enable people to get onto the latest technology in the quickest, easiest manner possible. And so we haven't, you know, said exactly how that will be for Horizon, but we do want people to get access to that technology as quickly as possible, because we know everybody's really excited about Horizon.
And so this question has a word in quotation marks, so I'll read it with finger quotes. So in terms of the Horizon system, what is the potential for hacking? I'm honestly not sure if that's a good hacking or a bad hacking, or how would you know, what's the connotation of hacking? But
yep, so that's a great question, and I'm really glad someone's asked, because I actually love answering these ones. So I think happy to answer. So one of the reasons why we moved to Bluetooth technology with Dash and with Horizon is that it is a more secure system. So the level of security is just much higher, and the difficulty for hacking is much more difficult in a Bluetooth configuration. And we don't just use standard Bluetooth. We have our own proprietary Bluetooth stack, and then there's like extra layers of security on top of Bluetooth to make sure that only, you know, authorized devices can talk to our pods. And so, you know, and security is an ongoing surveillance that we do for our current product as well as for Horizon. But the whole idea is that it's going to be much less hackable than older RF systems or older pumps that can be susceptible to hacking. And the other thing I would say is that Horizon is an automated insulin delivery system, and it is important when you're developing an AID system to have safeguards within it, where if you get a sensor value that is reading abnormally high come in, that your system can manage it, because the last thing that you want to do is that for the algorithm to give too much insulin and cause hypoglycemia. And so, you know, what we've spent the last 3-4 years doing is making sure that our algorithm is really thoughtful about, you know, that situation where that CGM value could be readings, you know, spuriously high. So when it's reading 300 when your actual BG is only 100, you know, you don't want to be delivering too much insulin for too long. And so we, you know, the hacking concern, if it's a concern, is also addressed through the algorithm by having what we call CGM independent controls to make sure that, you know, our patients are safe.
I like that kind of point on things, that it's all about making sure that patients are safe. Kind of open with that in terms of talking about supply chain and making sure that people have access to devices, and now in the current iterations and the future iterations. I like that safety is always where we start and stop. That's very good. As it stands now, we don't have any unanswered questions. You're super good at getting all the questions knocked out, so I wasn't sure what you had next here.
Yeah, I have a couple more things. So how do people with diabetes help design and test? I didn't get that. Could you... Sorry, that's my phone. How do people with diabetes help design and test new products? You know, how our products end up appearing like how they appear is because of many thousands of hours of testing with people with diabetes. And so, people might want to know, how do they get involved with research or product development? We're always on the lookout for users who can participate in either our product design or our clinical trials for Horizon. And so, yeah, Dash was designed the way it was because people were very specific about what they wanted to use and what they wanted to access on the home screen and what information was important to them. And so it's just a way for the diabetes community to contribute and have a say in what future innovation looks like from Insulet.
So may I ask, are these actual drawings from focus groups or?
Yeah, they
That
are.
is so cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, and I like the translation to something that has a cleaner font.
Yeah. Another question we get is, when can I bolus from my cell phone? So in fact, even though the first question, I think some of the first questions you mentioned came through was about Horizon. So I would say that actually the top question we get is, when can I actually bolus from my cell phone? And then the second question is generally about Horizon and AID systems. But we are working on bolusing from the phone so firstly the Horizon product, when we launch with Horizon, which is anticipated to be sort of within the next 12 months, so the first half of next year, where we'll be launching Horizon. And with the first launch of Horizon, we're going to be launching that with phone control. So people will be able to download an app and from selected Samsung phones will be able to control Horizon pods.
That is cool.
Yeah, and then in a second project that we're working on is the Tidepool Loop project. So many of you may have heard about Tidepool Loop, where they're looking to get cleared the Loop algorithm system, an interoperable system where we and other companies have been part of their interoperable system. And so this project is underway, and we're working closely with Tidepool to ensure that our products can communicate with their system and can deliver the algorithm commands per the intention of the product. And so this is underway and will be an opportunity for people to have an AID system through an iOS device and be able to bolus from their phone.
All the way around to bolusing from our phones. That's right. That's awesome. Oh, and actually, could you go back just, sorry, one quick thing that we hadn't gotten on there was that the study. So is that study currently recruiting?
That study is completed, has completed recruitment. And I think the results were presented at ATTD, and I think the final analysis is coming out in the next few months.
Cool.
So here's another product that we're working on. And so I think it was in February of this year where we announced our collaboration with Abbott Libre. So, the Freestyle Libre sensor is another sensor on the market where a lot of patients are using this product. And so we're super excited to be working with Abbott on our next generation Horizon product as well. So we don't want to just offer Horizon for just Dexcom users. We want to be available for all the great sensors that are on the market. So this is really super exciting as well. early days though, so we haven't announced, you know, timing or anything like that. But yeah, it's super exciting.
And also, we did have two other questions that came in that you had mentioned iOS. Just a quick question about Android. Is that in the works for a later date? I'm assuming for Horizon.
So Horizon, actually Android will be first and then iOS will be later. So the first phone control for Horizon will be with selected Samsung devices. So it'll be Android first. And then we'll rapidly expand that, and then we will also have Horizon iOS as well.
And then we had one other question that came in with a quick comment that Lucas was saying that they love everything that's in the pipeline for Horizon, and a question regarding the pods. Will the physical design of the pod change or evolve for Horizon?
So right now the Horizon pod is unchanged. So it'll be exactly the same in terms of look, feel, weight, all of that will be the same as with current pods. It will be undetectable to the human eye. But the difference will be that the pod will, on a tiny chip in a tiny corner of the pod, will have the Horizon algorithm.
Got it. And then one other question that came in about Horizon. Does the Horizon work by adjusting basals all day to keep you in range? And can you utilize Horizon in an open loop method as well? Yeah,
great question. So it's not just basal that it's adjusting, it will also give you adjustment of corrections as well. So really every 5 minutes, it's giving you a bit of basal and a little bit of extra for correction every 5 minutes. So it's not just basal adjustment. And yes, you can use it open loop, just like Dash. So without CGM, it operates essentially just like Dash, but with the CGM, you can run it both in automated mode or in manual mode. And I should add, since they were great questions, that you can set the target glucose for your algorithm. So you can set it down to 110, 120, 130, 140, and 150. So in our clinical studies, we've had patients use that at all those various set points, and we're generating data across that full spectrum of set points. And so that we'll get some early data out in the next few weeks with ADA, and then when we finish the pivotal study, we'll have more data coming out at the use of with the use of that across all the set points, and have a lot more data behind that as well.
That is cool. And then we also have attendees who are really thinking ahead. Someone has asked, Rebecca's asked, do we know which Samsung devices will be supported in the beginning in case she needs to upgrade her phone in the next few months? That's a very real world question.
Yeah, I don't know exactly right now. Yeah, we don't know. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, and I don't think we've announced that publicly yet. So
got it.
It'll be, you know, the other thing we want to make sure we do is we make sure that we'll be coming out with a version that people are either currently using or upgrading to. You know, like we're not going to just launch it with the product that 5 people use. So it will hopefully be one that, as a Samsung user, if you're already using, it should be accessible on that device, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That works. And then there are lots of people popping in to say thank you for answering their questions. So, but we're up to date with questions so far, and we have about 6 minutes left in our live broadcast. So
great. Well, I think I've only got a few more slides. So people often ask me, you know, where are pods made? Because people don't know. And so they're made in 2 places. One is in the USA. So we're excited to be manufacturing pods, I think, in the last 12 months at least, minimum, I think even earlier. So we previously, all of our pods were made in China, but now they're made both in China and the USA. And our so locally here in Massachusetts, in Acton, Massachusetts, which is about 40 minutes outside of Boston, we have a manufacturing facility, and we're due to have 4 lines in place where we can make a lot of pods. And when I say a lot, I think last year we probably made more than 30 million pods.
Wow.
I don't know the exact number, but that's kind of the ballpark. It's like a lot. And so, you know, as we move to more automated measures, the quality of each pod is just going to be much more consistent. And I think, you know, people who've used our products for a long time, you know, in the early days when each pod was handmade, there was just a lot more variability in terms of the performance of those pods. But now, you know, now that we're making so many pods, the quality and consistency of that product performance is just vastly improved. So now we, you know, rarely get complaints about that. It's more, when is Horizon coming out? You know, so which is
I love
great.
the idea of handmade pods. It makes it sound very artisanal, like it's some handcrafted. So
yeah, maybe we should release some that are just handmade. So.
Like the vintage
special
pods.
order. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you know, that's how all these companies started, you know, like sensors. I think actually sensors are still, there's a lot of hand, you know, kind of manual parts to sensor production even now, I think. So, but certainly in the early days, a lot of those sensors were handmade.
I remember years and years ago, I toured the Animas manufacturing plant, and to see that there were people making the pumps. I mean, automation sounds great in terms of making everything precise and like you were saying, making things automated to make them exactly the same. But it was really interesting to meet the guy who built my insulin pump, or the team of people, like the actual hands-on. That has its own kind of community feel to it. So
yeah,
that was kind of cool back in the day.
Yeah, so this picture here on the right just shows, you know, the pod casing there, and actually just in the background here are the PCB boards, and, you know, the reservoir you can see there on the corner. A lot of people, you know, hammer their pods apart so they can see the insides. So that's all the insides of the pods on the assembly line there.
People never take devices apart. We never do that. We're never curious about what the inside looks like.
No.
That is really cool, though.
Yeah, great. And then this was just a summary slide of, you know, what we're trying to do as a company to really help simplify and improve the lives of people with diabetes. You know, products like Dash and Horizon are intended to allow people to have simple, effective insulin therapy. And then the other thing is that, you know, it's not just about products we have for today, but, you know, our pipeline of Horizon, Tidepool, collaboration with Libre is about ensuring that our patients have choice in products and interoperability to make sure that they always can be at the forefront of technology and innovation.
That is, sorry?
No, that's basically, you know, our mission.
Well, I love that you have walked through all of this with us, taken so many questions from the people who attended with us this afternoon, and also both of us managed to get through this entire hour without being interrupted, which I think is a small miracle unto itself. So was there anything that you wanted to say or add for the CWD community before we sign off?
No, just that, you know, thank you for having me. And Kerri, thank you for taking your afternoon off to host this event. You know, we're always happy to share what we're doing. So thanks for having me part of the program.
Well, I'm glad that you guys were willing to come on and hang out with us. And it's always good to give a behind the scenes sort of look to people in the community on who's actually doing all the stuff at Insulet and who can speak about what's going on behind the scenes, because so often we see the devices that arrive at our houses, but we don't often get to hear from the people. So it's really great to have that chance to connect with you today. So thanks for spending the time with us. I hope you get to get outside because it really does look really nice outside.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, and there were lots of thank yous coming in.
Oh.
Yes. And somebody actually mentioned it's Sunday, so that confirms that it's actually Sunday. So there is a name to this day. But Trang, thank you so much for coming on with us, and we will have this broadcast live on the CWD website soon. But in the interim, if anybody else has any other questions, they can feel free to reach out to our team and we can pass those along. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Talk to you soon. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.